Hi there, everybody. I'm delighted to be here today and to kick things off. The title of my presentation is around building young people's resilience through mentoring programs. So in this, I'm going to be looking at what is resilience, what is characterized by resilience, but also in terms of mentoring, what has the research taught us in terms of mentoring and quality mentoring. And following on from that, I'm going to be showing you the differences that looking at the research has made to our delivery and design of our current mentoring program, which has gone through massive change because of the learning from research. Okay? So just very quickly in terms of the ISPCC. So we are the National Child Protection Agency. Our vision is an Ireland where all children are safe and valued. Our mission is to make the protection of children everyone's priority. And our work, very simply, is we listen, we support, and we protect. And by doing that, we effectively are empowering children and families. And that's really all of the services, including mentoring. That is our kind of ultimate goal. In terms of the kind of services we provide, we have developed our quality framework, which looks very, very simple here. But it was designed in a way that it would be transferable to our staff, to our volunteers, to have a clear understanding about what it is we mean by quality. The child and the family has to be at the centre. Child-centred services, so everything we do is based on the needs of the child. Safe and efficient services. And the safe side of the services is hugely important, particularly when you look at mentoring and the inherent risk and the potential for harm when delivering mentoring programs. Sustainable outcomes, so not just outcomes focused, but ensuring that whatever outcomes you actually achieve, that they are sustainable over time and that all of our programs are based on evidence and best practice. Outside of that, obviously, data protection, resource management, and the personnel. And when I talk about personnel, I'm talking about both staff and volunteers in terms of delivery of programs. Okay, so it's all about being outcomes focused. Everybody talks about it. We're outcomes focused, it's all we're about, we're measuring outcomes, we're doing all of these things. But in the ISPCC, we've really reduced the outcomes we're trying to achieve through all of our services on three main areas. The first one is around social support, and not just having a support network, but the quality of that particular network being developed. The second one is around coping ability and individual resilience. So this is the whole area of self-concept. So how you see yourself, the value you place on that, what you actually want to be or where you want to go. And finally, the ability of children to self-regulate. Now, we very often call that within the ISPCC the I can, the I am, and the I have, and I'll be talking about that in a minute. And we took a lot of that from the work of Edith Grotberg, who was involved in the International Resilience Project way back in the 90s. I don't know if you're aware of that particular piece of work. Okay, so what is resilience? A lot of people will describe it in different ways, and if I was to ask each and every one of you here what you think resilience is, you'd all come up with something different. Another word, another way of describing it. But it's really about how we cope with adversity. You might come back with, it's bounce back ability. Children love that one. Being able to bounce back from something that has happened or something that has occurred in your life. Adaptive coping, hardiness, being tough. And a lot of those things can be very helpful, but they can also be quite harmful because for a lot of children that are going through adversity, if they aren't coping well, it's just, oh no, I'm not tough enough, I'm not strong enough, I can't do that. And all of those negative emotions actually come into it. But what's really important is to recognise that resilience is about that adaptability, being able to actually survive and even thrive in the face of adversity. And for as many words as you can find in relation to resilience, there's equally as many definitions. So really it's about looking at what definition really fits for you, but also what fits for the young people that you're actually working with, so they have an understanding of what it is you're trying to achieve. So let's look at what it's characterised by. And again, a lovely big long list. And if you look through that list, you think, oh, but they're all wonderful. Being able to communicate, having a sense of humour, achievement of healthy, positive relationships, the ability to trust, to know that somebody loves you. And you think, sure, everybody should have that. And the reality is, as ordinary as all of those things are, put together, it's an incredible thing. And that's why the whole discussion happens around, is resilience an ordinary thing, or is it something extraordinary? Is resilience something that children who are facing adversity needs, or is it in fact something that everybody needs, regardless of what age they are? And also the whole question around, if you're resilient at 3, does that mean you'll be resilient at 7, at 10, at 45, etc.? So, just a second. if you look at the whole area of this being kind of ordinary magic, which it has been referred to in research, rather than the extraordinary, what you'll find is that 3 things come out all the time: children, families, and communities. So when you actually look at that, this is about the inherent everydayness of children themselves, their view of themselves, their family, their connectedness with the family, and also that sense of belonging within a community and feeling that they have some value and worth within that. If any of those areas, the child themselves, the family, the community, if any of those areas are impaired somewhat, then that, if a child faces adversity, if it's impaired either before, during, or after, then that can have a negative impact on their development. But again, it's about recognising that resilience is for everybody, and not just for what has been described as the out-of-control children, or the troublesome kids, or the at-risk kids, or all of these particular areas. It's for everybody. So what are the protective factors? And all of these things are really important, because if you're going to try and develop a mentoring programme that's actually going to build resilience, you need to know what these things are. Connectedness comes up all the time. Connectedness, meaningful relationships, having that one key relationship, even if that's just with one adult. Not necessarily a parent, but very often can be a parent. It's the single most important element in protecting young children, in terms of not facing or being able to face adversity and being able to deal with multiple risk factors. So do they build resilience? Well, from the research that's there's parts that will say yes, it does, and there's parts that say no, it doesn't. And the reason it says no, it doesn't, is can be very much around how a programme is actually delivered in the first place. So yes, it can influence peer and parental relationships, academic performance, even attendance at school, the whole area of self-concept, behaviour, self-regulation, all of those areas. It also highlights, again, the connectedness with a meaningful relationship with one adult, and that's around developing their self-esteem. And then, when that relationship is placed at the centre, that is really the key determining factor in terms of outcomes and achieving positive outcomes. And it is that relationship and that focus on the relationship that will actually determine whether or not your programmes will actually achieve positive outcomes. So then it may seem that it's ideal. Sure, what could be wrong? You have a child, they need a one good adult, you attach them and link them up with a mentor. What could possibly go wrong? And the reality is that a lot can go wrong. And there is a huge, huge difference between the theory of mentoring and its application across the globe. Dr. Bernardine Brady has already outlined the huge growth in mentoring across the globe, but there's huge differences in the way it's approached in terms of the duration, the intensity, and the target group that are actually being matched up in terms of mentoring programs. So generalised statements saying, oh, mentoring works, can be very problematic, because you can't actually say that without knowing the quality and the practice that's actually being followed. So very quickly, I'm going to go through 12 points in terms of what the research has told us and that ISPCC has used in terms of designing our own programme. So generally, best practice leads to positive outcomes, but the key word there is best practice. So if best practice is being followed, then generally that will lead to positive outcomes. Mentoring has the potential to do immense harm. And I think this is a key area, and the first area that we have to acknowledge, that if you match an unrelated adult with a child, you have to treat that with caution. You cannot go into that blind thinking, sure, what could go wrong? Because a lot can actually go wrong. You have to think about the fact that a child who's being matched with a mentor is vulnerable to begin with. If, for any reason, that relationship breaks down within 2 months or 3 months, that can have an immense negative impact on the child that is being mentored. So it's about the quality of the mentoring programme. It's also about the relationship, but also the fact that good intentions just are not good enough. The wide appeal of mentoring has outpaced its scientific base. And as much research that's actually there, it does not, or it's not as robust as you would imagine it would be, based on the level of programme development across the world. The quality of the relationship, same thing comes up all the time, is absolutely key, and is in fact the key determining factor in terms of achievement of positive outcomes. The contact with the mentor and the mentee, not only must it be consistent, but frequent. And there's huge differences in the research that we looked at about what exactly is the right length of time, or the right amount of time on a monthly basis to meet a child. But generally, and again it's general because there's different guidelines, but it should not be less than 4 hours a week, and it should be up to 12 months at least, in terms of the mentoring and the relationship, and recognising the importance of it. Involving parents and carers. This again is really important. Now, while it's not absolutely necessary in order to have positive outcomes, it is very significant. Because what you have to remember is when you're mentoring a child, that mentoring relationship is going to end. So a huge part of the work should be around establishing another social network for that child to actually link in with, so that they can develop their own social network and the quality of that. So involving parents from the onset will actually get parents involved. It will prevent what can happen where parents may try to sabotage the relationship because they may feel that they're actually left out. So it is important. Mentoring is not the panacea for everything. Mentoring is not going to be the answer for every youth issue. But it should be seen, I suppose, as a broad strategy in terms of matching a child with another adult. Outcomes in the area of self-concept are mixed. So there are positives. And again, it is down to the quality of the service that you're actually providing, the match precision, how you're actually going to deliver this particular programme. A schedule ending is not harmful. And this is really important, because we talked earlier about the fact that it can harm a child if that mentoring relationship closes down too quickly. But if it's planned, if the child is aware of it, that this mentoring is not going to go on for the next 10 years, you can plan for it, you can develop your programme around it, you can develop closing activities, and you can prepare the child for the upcoming ending. And in fact, it can be a celebration of achievement as opposed to it being a loss alone in terms of the relationship. And matching precision can overcome ethnic differences. And I think there was a belief at one point that you had to match various groups with those particular groups, but that is not the case. It's about the precision of the match and the actual child having a choice in who their mentor should actually be. Okay, so then if you look at all of that, what were the common elements when you actually found programs that actually worked well? Young people's sensitive administration is particularly important. The management of the actual program, the flexibility. Bernadine already mentioned that. Where you're going to meet the child, what time you're going to meet the child, what you're going to do when you are meeting that child. The development of networks. And again, this is about looking beyond the mentoring relationship to what happens next. Where do you go next? And it's hugely important that it's not just that relationship, but a development of others. Getting ongoing feedback, again, is important not just for your service development and learning about how to continually improve, but also in terms of managing any risk around harm. And the ISPCC have taken this very seriously in terms of our service design, and I'll be talking about that in a minute. And also then having the usual sufficient resources. You need to have resources in order to be able to run a program, okay? And that's where the biggest challenge can be sometimes. Okay, so what has this meant for us and what have we done? And again, the first do no harm. You might think that's not really a fantastic goal to have, is it? As a service provider, we're going to provide all these services and our main thing is that we won't do harm. It's not very kind of, whoo-hoo, look at what we're doing. But the reality is you have to start at that base. And in the ISPCC, we take that heading very, very seriously, and we put in these 5 broad principles that covers every aspect of our work. So the mentoring programme, again, has 3 goals, or 3 outcomes areas that we focus on. The I can, the I have, and the I am. So which is self-regulation, social support, and self-esteem and self-worth. So what is this? And this has really helped our volunteers in terms of understanding what exactly do you mean by self-regulation? What exactly do you mean by social support? What will that actually mean for the child? So when a child is going through the programme, what is it that they should be able to say at the end of that programme? So a child should be able to say, I can make a difference. I can talk to others about things that frighten me. I can find somebody to help me when I need it. I can find ways to solve problems. And that's one of the key issues we're finding in the ISPCC, is that young people do not have problem-solving skills. And that can lead to so many more difficulties. And I can control myself when needed. And that's about recognising emotions, recognising why they're behaving in particular ways, and then developing the skills around self-regulation. I have, and this is the social support. It's the Headstrong survey, one good adult in my life who will show me how to do things right. Equally important is wanting them to go out and try that on their own, learn from their own mistakes, help me when I'm sick or in trouble, and will keep me safe. So it's that secure base. It kind of all goes back to attachment. And I'm not going to go into a whole lecture about attachment, but that particular area. And finally, the I am. This is around the whole area of self-esteem. I am loved, I am lovable, I am worthwhile, I am unique, I am special. I'm happy to do nice things for others. I am respectful of others, and I'm willing to be responsible for what I do. So those three outcome areas, the I can, I am, and I have, is what we've designed our programme to meet. But what's particularly important when you're talking about outcomes is we've designed the programme for that, but we don't have our mentees or mentors going out there saying, today I'm going to focus on social support, and today I'm going to increase this child's self-esteem. Because the research has also told us that if somebody is going out and that's their whole focus, I'm going to increase Johnny's self-esteem today, it actually won't work. Whereas if they actually go out and say, I'm going to meet Johnny today and we're going to have fun, we're going to enjoy each other's company, all of those other outcomes actually fit into place. So, sorry, that's a repeat slide. So what then has this research evidence actually done for us in terms of how we changed our programme? It has actually changed beyond recognition, to be honest with you. And I think that's a very challenging thing for any organisation who's been delivering a programme and actually re-looks at it to say, do you know what? We're not always right, we don't always do things perfectly, and we've a lot to learn. And we've actually changed the programme quite substantially. So in terms of the potential to immense harm, that is the forerunner. We have now developed our quality framework. We have developed a full policy and procedural manual going from what the programme is, what the programme is going to be designed for. We invited in the Centre for Effective Services to actually work through with us around the mentoring programme from beginning to end. We actually have a whole recruitment and selection procedure. We have eligibility criteria for volunteers as well as children. And that whole match area is hugely important. Supervision and ongoing training for our volunteers is hugely important. And supervision and management of our volunteers, it takes the very same form as it would with our staff. So they get monthly one-to-one supervision, there's monthly case discussions and support, there's quarterly training in terms of new areas that are coming up so that we continuously develop skills in that area. The quality of the relationship, that's kind of what I mentioned. Yes, you have to know what outcomes you're trying to achieve, but be sensible about how you're actually going to achieve them. And the relationship is the key area. So it is about having fun, getting out there, getting to know the child, because the relationship is the key determinant of a positive outcome. Frequent and consistent contact. Again, we've increased our contact to be at least 1 to 2 hours every week. Active participations in service users throughout the whole programme in terms of what goals they want to achieve, how they want to meet, where they want to meet, how they're going to engage with us, how they're going to give us feedback, what goals, what the programme plan will be. So they're fully participating in every aspect of it. In terms of how they contact us, that can be face-to-face, it can be by phone, it can be through web-based intervention, or a mixture of all three. And again, it's about engaging with young people the way they want to engage, in the same way with their mentors. In terms of the duration, we used to mentor children for 6 months. We were horrified to find that we were wrong, but we have to learn from that. And we actually expanded that to be a minimum of 12 months. And there have been some occasions where that extended just a slight bit more, but it is about making sure that the whole focus was on the relationship. Involvement in parent and carers. We take this very, very seriously, so we actually enlist the support of parents from the onset. We get them involved in terms of telling us about their child and recognising they know their child far better than we do. The child knows themselves far better than we do, and we need to use that knowledge to actually develop a programme for their child. We meet with the parent once a month for the first 3 months to get their input, to get their insights, to get them involved, to keep them informed, and to try and work towards a situation that when we're gone, when ISPCC mentor has moved on from that family, that child can link with their parent. Things can continue from that point. We then review the programme on a quarterly basis throughout the relationship. We get their involvement through the assessment and through our WWOET, and I'll be coming to that in a minute. What the hell is that? But also recognising their role to ensure the sustainability of the outcomes you achieve. Because it's not just about achieving something after that 12 months, but making sure that that is sustained into the future. We recognise that mentoring isn't the be-all and end-all, that you have to actually link in with other service providers. And if you take a situation where you're mentoring a child in South West Kerry, I always say South West Kerry because I'm from South West Kerry, where there isn't the basketball club or the rugby club. If you don't like football, away you go, like Gaelic. So what other options do you have? So that's why there could be difficulties then about activity-based mentoring in some areas, because the mentor may be able to drive them an hour to go to the swimming pool. but is that something that's going to be sustainable into the future? The duration of the match is hugely important in terms of areas of self-concept. Programme goals, they are in control. And it's about letting go of that control, and organisations letting go of the control so that the child is actually the one that's leading the programme. And a schedule ending, we recognise that if you start well, you can continue well and end well. And it's just really important that your programme activities, that your programme objectives include that whole area of preparing for closure. So that's the changes we made, but we also had to look at, okay, the evidence has brought us to this point, but we do need to continue to look at it and also kind of look at our own evidence base. So that lovely WWOET I mentioned, it's called the What Works Outcome Evaluation Tool. We know it's not a great name, but none of us have come up with a better one, so we're sticking with it for now. But it's an online ACASI tool, which is the audio computer assisted self-interviewing. And that sounds incredibly boring, but it is actually very engaging. So I'll show you what that is in a minute. But what we ask every child that's involved in the mentoring programme, every parent, and also a key stakeholder in the child's life. So that could be the person who referred the child to us, or another key person in their life, to complete, which is an online questionnaire, within the first 4 weeks of us beginning work, and within the last 4 weeks before we complete the work. So it allows us to gather baseline data as well as follow-up data. But what's equally important is it lets the child assess their needs and strengths, the parent to outline their views of the child's needs and strengths, but also that key stakeholder. So you're getting a very broad view. So it's not just a professional view of me or one of the mentors going in saying, these are your needs, these are your strengths, and let's go. We also focus on our 4 outcome areas so that we can measure baseline and follow-up, but not just outcomes, but the level of change that occurs. So a lot of organisations measure satisfaction ratings, which is great. Your service users need to be satisfied with the service you're offering. But also, we need to be measuring, has there been a change in knowledge or understanding in terms of what's going on for this child? Based on that level of knowledge and understanding, has there been any change in behaviour, either by the child, by the parent? What change has occurred in terms of that? And how can you show that concretely? Because we know how difficult it is. Because a child may improve their resilience following a programme, but was it really your programme? Or was it an interaction they had with their youth worker or in the school? So we know the challenges around measuring it, but this is one way of helping towards that. And finally, community-wide impact. Has it made a difference to that child's family, the community, in terms of impact? So as I said, it's the ACASI tool. We give them a login. They do it in their own time. So the child, the key stakeholder, and the parent, they do it in their own time. They look at where they feel the child is at the beginning and at the very end. What's interesting about it, though, and I'll show it to you rather than just showing you the text. So when a child logs in, a parent logs in, they're going to get their own screen. But what's wonderful about this, particularly for children, is they can actually customise it to what they'd like to see on the screen themselves. So you'll have your question at the top. So here is, did your ISPC mentor ask you for your views and opinions? So this is kind of in terms of our quality framework. So we ask questions around compliance to what it is our service is supposed to do. There's a whole customization bar, so you can change your assistant. So here it's a lovely lady, but you can change that to a gorilla or whoever it is you want to help you through it. For those with literacy issues, you can press, again, the customize bar, and it will talk you through the questions and highlight the responses so that you know which one to click. Also at the bottom, which we found was very important for young people completing it, they need to know how much more they have to do. So here they've 23% done, but they can work their way through it. And the other positive thing is they don't have to end. You can finish, but you can come back and continue from where you're at. So you don't have to do it in one sitting. So it is very flexible in that sense. In terms of, you can select a scene. So if you're into cars, you can have that as your scene. If you're into farming or sheep, you can put in that one, or cityscape or sports or whatever. So you can work your way through all of that. So in terms of measuring our outcomes, we use our OET a lot. And what's wonderful about it is when you are actually trying to measure outcomes, you can actually pull reports from the system, which you can actually go by age, by gender, by area, by reason for referral, by outcome area, whether that's the I have, the I can, or the I am, in terms of outcomes. We did work with NUI way back in 2007, and they were hugely beneficial in terms of how we measured our outcomes. So they would have given us guidelines around what particular standardized evaluation tool you should use for each of those areas. So for the I haves, which is a lot of our mentoring work and the whole area of social support, we would use both the network questionnaire and the social provision scale, because it's not enough to just ask a child, have you got a good network of friends? Because they'll say, oh yeah, I have 500 people following me on Snapchat, and I have 675,000 following me here. But if you were to say to them, if you had a worry, who could you talk to? There may be very little. So it's important not just to measure the network, but the quality of it. We use our OET for each of the areas. But when you look at coping ability and individual resilience, we use the Rosenberg and the Adolescent Wellbeing Scale, the Parent-Child Inventory, if there's a particular area that needs to be worked on there, and so on. So the biggest part of all of this is that it's not just the professional's viewpoint. It's not just what the set is telling us, because sets, they can, depending on what has happened that day, how the child feels in that particular day, but also our outcome evaluation tool, plus what the child is telling us. And it's when you put all of those together, you can actually reach their outcome. I've already mentioned the 4 levels. So satisfaction, knowledge, behaviour, and community-wide change. So we also measure that through our WWOET. But just to conclude, has it actually made a difference to outcomes? And in some ways you could look at that and think, oh yeah, satisfaction is great. That's great, it's 100%. But what we have here is a very realistic picture of what we achieved with all of the mentoring clients that we had last year, where we had a 100% satisfaction rate, 94% who believed and showed us through concrete evidence that they had a change in knowledge and behaviour, or a change in knowledge or understanding about the issue. A reduced 73% in terms of behaviour change, and 39% where it actually had an impact in their community. So we're very proud of those results. They're results that we're going to be monitoring and look at and hoping to grow over the next while. Thank you very much for your time.